Not the polite kind of knock that asks permission. The kind that orders you to open before your world breaks. Inside a small suburban home just outside Baltimore. Leah Carter woke up gasping. She thought it was thunder. Then came the shouting. Police, open up. Her husband Darius jolted awake beside her, heart pounding, instincts firing faster than his thoughts. But Darius wasn't like other men. He was a retired Navy SEAL commander, trained for war, trained to react before emotion. Yet that night, he froze, because this wasn't Afghanistan. This was his home, and the screams coming from outside sounded nothing like justice. Leah grabbed her robe, terrified. "Darius, what's happening?" she whispered, trembling. He rose silently, stepping toward the door, muscles tensed. "Stay back, baby," he said, his voice low, controlled. "Something's wrong." Then boom, the door exploded. A flash grenade rolled in, blinding white light swallowing the room. Leah screamed. Gunfire erupted, loud, chaotic, merciless. When the smoke cleared, Leah was on the ground. Blood, so much blood. "No," Darius shouted, his voice raw, breaking through years of trained silence. He dropped beside her, pressing his hands against her wound. "Leah, stay with me. Please stay." Outside, the cops yelled commands. "Suspect down." "We got one down inside." But they didn't know who he was. They didn't know what they had just done. Darius Carter wasn't just a man. He was a ghost of the U.S. Navy's most elite unit, trained to dismantle armies, and now his heart had just been torn apart in his own home as the red and blue lights painted the walls. Darius lifted Leah's limp hand to his face and whispered, "They came for the wrong house." And for the first time in years, his tears met the blood on his hands. The flashing lights outside the Carter home burned like blue fire against a nightmare. Leah lay still as paramedics worked around her. Darius knelt on the living room floor, hands cuffed behind his back, his bare feet cold against broken glass. "Sir, don't move," a young officer shouted, weapon trembling in his grip. Darius didn't move. His eyes were locked on Leah, the love of his life, as she was wheeled out on a stretcher, covered halfway by a white sheet that said more than words ever could. The commander inside him wanted to break those cuffs, grab a weapon, and end the madness. But the man, the husband, could only whisper, "She didn't do anything. She didn't do anything." Another officer, older, harder, stood over him. Name, Darius didn't answer. He just stared through him, as if he were already gone. They hauled him up, dragging him outside past flashing cameras and neighbors peeking through curtains. Someone shouted, "They got him." "The drug dealer." Another said, "Guess, that's what you get for running with gangs." But Darius Carter had never touched drugs. He'd fought wars for a flag that now stared at him with suspicion, at the police station. The cold metal chair dug into his back as he sat in the interrogation room. Two detectives entered, one holding a folder thick with papers, the other with coffee he didn't need. Darius Carter, the older one, began, flipping open the file. 41 years old. Former Navy. Served 15 years. Says here, you led SEAL Team 9 before your medical discharge. That right? Darius didn't answer. His eyes were dull, unreadable. "Guess that makes you dangerous," the younger detective muttered. The older one smirked. "You know, your neighborhood's been under investigation for months. We had reports of a drug ring using that exact address as a stash house. You matching that description didn't help." That's when Darius finally looked up. His voice was low, but sharp enough to cut the air. "You raided the wrong house." The detective shrugged. "Things happen. Wrong info. Collateral damage." Darius's jaw tightened. Collateral damage was my wife, Leah Carter. She was a teacher. He leaned forward, his voice trembling with quiet fury. "She taught kids how to dream. You killed her because your paperwork had a typo." The detective's smirk faded. Silence hung heavy. Suddenly the door burst open, A captain entered, face pale. He whispered something to the older detective. The detective froze, then looked back at Darius with disbelief. You weren't the suspect. Darius stood. The cuffs rattled. What did you just say? The captain stepped forward. There's been a mistake. The warrant was for 2916 Maple Avenue. Darius's voice cracked like thunder. My house is 2918. The room went cold. The detectives exchanged a look of horror. Darius slowly sat back down, laughing a low, hollow sound that didn't sound human anymore. You raided the wrong home, killed my wife, and arrested me. He stared straight into the captain's eyes. You have no idea what you've started. And in that sterile white room, something inside the former Navy SEAL commander snapped, not in rage, but in resolve. They thought he was just another black man caught in the system. They had no idea that this man had once led missions the government denied ever happened. They didn't know that the man in handcuffs had trained to survive anything, and to fight back when the system failed. That night, as Leah's body lay cold in the morgue, Darius Carter made a silent vow. He would uncover the truth. He would make them pay, not with bullets, but with truth so loud it couldn't be buried. But vengeance has a cost, and the ghosts of war were about to follow him home the next morning. Darius sat alone in a holding cell, his eyes red and empty. He hadn't slept. He hadn't blinked much either. He just replayed Leah's final breath over and over, her soft hands slipping from his, her voice whispering, I'm scared. He used to tell her not to worry, that he'd protect her, no matter what. But how do you protect someone from your own country's mistake? A guard unlocked the cell door. Carter, you're free to go. Darius looked up slowly. What? The DA dropped all charges. It was a bad warrant. You're clean. The guard hesitated, then muttered, Sorry, man. Darius didn't answer. He just stood up, walked out, and left the station like a ghost. Outside, reporters swarmed. Mr. Carter, is it true your wife was killed by mistake? Are you planning to sue the city? Do you think race played a part? He said nothing. He just walked past the flashing cameras and into a world that suddenly felt colder than the war zones he'd survived. When he reached home, yellow tape still fluttered across the broken doorway, bloodstains on the floor, glass everywhere, and Leah's favorite mug cracked in half near the counter. He picked it up, held it like something sacred. Then his knees gave out, and for the first time since the raid, he broke. He cried, like a man who had buried too many people. But this time, the loss wasn't on foreign soil. It was home. The whisper of a light 2 days later, a young journalist named Maya Torres knocked on his temporary apartment door. She was small, sharp-eyed, and stubborn, the kind of reporter who didn't let things go. Commander Carter, she said softly. He didn't respond at first, but she pressed on. I'm sorry for your loss, but I think there's more to this. I've seen the raid logs. Something doesn't add up. Darius frowned. What do you mean? She opened her tablet and showed him the police report. The official record says they got an anonymous tip about drugs at your address. But look at this. She zoomed in on a signature at the bottom. The officer who authorized the raid wasn't even on duty that night. Darius stared at the screen. What are you saying? I'm saying someone faked that warrant. Someone wanted that raid to happen. He clenched his fists. Leah's face flashed in his mind, her smile, her gentle voice, her love for kids. If someone did this intentionally, it wasn't just a tragedy. It was murder. Maya leaned closer. There's more. The body cam footage from that night? She hesitated. It's missing. Darius stood up, pacing. His mind shifted into commander mode, calculating, tactical, precise. Who's the commanding officer on the case? Captain Reynolds, Maya said. Baltimore PD's Tactical Response Unit. Darius froze. He knew that name. Years ago, in Afghanistan, A contractor named Elliot Reynolds had worked with his SEAL team on a covert op, a man with a reputation for taking shortcuts and covering his tracks. Now he was a police captain. Something inside Darius clicked. This wasn't random. This was personal. He turned to Maya. You have no idea what you've just walked into. She crossed her arms. Neither do you. But I'm not walking away. The oath that night, Darius stood by Leah's grave, the moonlight painting her tombstone silver. He whispered, "You always told me my past would come back one day. I didn't believe you." He placed his SEAL insignia on the soil. Then he whispered, "This time, I'm fighting for you." He didn't have weapons or a team, but he had his training and his truth. And somewhere inside the system, a man with blood on his hands was about to feel what real justice looked like. Back at the precinct, Captain Reynolds sat in his office, flipping through a file labeled Carter Incident. A nervous officer entered. "Sir, the ex-SEAL's been released." The reporters poking around. Reynolds didn't look up. "Handle it quietly." The officer swallowed hard. "And if he doesn't stay quiet?" Reynolds smiled thinly. "Then he disappears, just like the footage." That same night, Darius loaded Leah's old car, checking the rearview mirror. He knew they'd come for him now, but this time, he wasn't the target. He was the hunter. The city didn't sleep much anymore, not since that night. Rain poured hard over Baltimore, washing away footprints, but not guilt. Inside an old garage near the harbor, Darius Carter sat at a metal desk, surrounded by newspaper clippings, blueprints, and photographs. The war room was back, only this time, it wasn't a battlefield overseas. It was home. Across from him sat Maya Torres, the reporter who refused to walk away. She was typing furiously, pulling files from her encrypted drive. "I found something," she said, eyes flashing. The police reports from the last 6 months. Every drug house raid, led by Captain Reynolds, ended up with missing evidence or dead suspects. Darius leaned forward, voice steady but sharp. "Dead witnesses mean no loose ends." Maya nodded. "Exactly. But here's the thing. Every address they raided had one thing in common." She slid a photo across the table. A corporate logo. A silver triangle with the letters Vanguard Realty Group. Darius frowned. "What's a real estate company got to do with this?" Maya tapped the photo. "They're buying up homes in poor black neighborhoods. Every time a family mysteriously gets evicted or killed in a raid, Vanguard buys the property cheap within weeks. Reynolds signs the warrant. Vanguard buys the land. It's a pattern." Darius's jaw clenched. "They used the police to clear neighborhoods, like a war zone." He looked away, voice trembling with rage. "They killed Leah for land." The trail of ghosts. Maya connected her laptop to a small projector. On the wall appeared footage, shaky, gray-tinted, taken from an old body cam. "I found this fragment in a backup server. It's not the full video. Someone tried to erase it." Darius leaned closer. The screen flickered. He saw shadows moving through their house, black uniforms, lasers slicing through the dark. Then came the flash grenade, Leah's scream, and a voice, a male voice. Calm and distinct, giving the order. "Engage, no witnesses." Maya paused the frame. "Listen again." Darius's blood ran cold. He recognized that voice. Captain Elliot Reynolds. He stood there, frozen, fists trembling at his sides. "That's him," he said quietly. "That's the same man who ran a covert op in Kandahar. He covered up civilian deaths. I reported him. He got sent home dishonorably." Maya's eyes widened. "You mean he knew who I was?" "He wanted revenge." The turning point. Darius walked to the corner of the garage and pulled open an old duffel bag. Inside were fragments of his past, a broken compass, a folded American flag, and a black tactical wristband marked Seal Zero Navi. He slipped it on. The soldier in him was back. "Maya," he said, his tone colder now. We're going to expose him, but not through the courts. Not yet. She hesitated. What are you planning? Something I learned overseas. When the enemy hides behind uniforms, you don't fight him in daylight. You drag him into the dark. Maya swallowed hard. That sounds dangerous. He looked at her, calm but burning inside. It's justice. The trap. The next evening, Darius broke into an abandoned storage unit, registered under Reynolds' name. He moved like a shadow, silent, invisible. Inside, he found boxes of confiscated evidence from old cases, money, weapons, and stacks of property contracts. Every document bore the same company name, Vanguard Realty Group. He photographed everything, sending files to Maya in real. Then he froze. A red light blinked in the corner, a hidden security camera, and a voice from behind him said, "I was wondering when you'd show up, Commander." Darius turned. Reynolds stood in the doorway, a pistol in his hand and a cruel smile on his face. "Well," Reynolds said softly, "the hero finally comes home." Darius didn't flinch. "You killed my wife." Reynolds shrugged. "She was collateral damage. Wrong house. But I'll admit, it was poetic, wasn't it? The soldier loses his family to the same system he served." Darius's muscles tightened, rage crawling up his throat. "You think you can bury this?" Reynolds smirked. "I already did. The footage is gone. The warrants are sealed, and in 2 weeks, Vanguard breaks ground on your block." Darius took a slow step forward. "Not if I bury you first." Reynolds raised the gun, but in that split second, Darius lunged, twisting his wrist, sending the weapon skidding across the floor. Years of combat training came flooding back. They fought viciously, fists echoing against steel. Then, a punch to the ribs, a headbutt. Darius threw Reynolds against the wall, breathing hard. Reynolds grinned, blood running from his lip. "You can't stop this, Carter. You think you're a hero, but the system protects me." Darius's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then I'll take the system down with you." He grabbed the man's collar, forcing him to face the blinking camera. "Smile for the truth," Darius said. And with that, he slammed the power switch, sending the footage straight to Maya's encrypted drive. The fallout minutes later, Darius escaped as sirens wailed in the distance. He knew they'd come for him now, but it didn't matter, because this time, he had proof. Miles away, Maya watched the live feed appear on her screen. Her hands shook as she uploaded it to her news outlet's secure server. "God help us," she whispered, because what they had just uncovered wasn't just one bad cop. It was a machine, fueled by greed, protected by badges, and funded by powerful men. And at the center of it all was a man named Reynolds, and a husband who would rather burn down the system than let his wife's death be forgotten the next morning. The video was everywhere. Headlines screamed across every screen. Leaked body cam footage exposes corrupt police raid, innocent woman killed. Within hours, millions had seen it. Hashtags filled social media. The people were angry. The police department was in chaos. And at the center of it all, a ghost named Darius Carter. He didn't want fame. He wanted truth. But in a country built on silence, truth was the most dangerous weapon of all. The chase begins by noon. Darius's face was on every news channel. "Armed and dangerous," the anchor said. "Suspected of assaulting an officer and stealing police data." It was the same old playbook. Turn the victim into the villain, inside a motel room outside the city. Darius watched the report on a flickering TV. Maya paced behind him, phone pressed to her ear. "They're spinning it," she said. "They're saying you attacked Reynolds. They're saying Leah's death was a crossfire accident." Darius didn't blink. "They're scared. That's how I know it's working." He packed a small bag, laptop, photos, and the old seal wristband. Maya frowned. "Where are you going?" "Reynolds isn't the top. Someone gave the order to erase that footage. I'm going to find out who." Maya stepped in front of him. If you walk out that door, they'll hunt you down. You're already their target. Darius met her eyes. I've been hunted before. The power behind the badge that night, Maya snuck into the network's server room. She was risking her career, and maybe her life. Through a contact at the station, she accessed police databases. There it was, the chain of command. Captain Reynolds reported directly to Deputy Commissioner Blake Harding, and next to Harding's name was a file stamped Vanguard Realty Holdings Executive Advisor. She froze. The same company again. This wasn't corruption. It was an operation, a network of powerful men turning poor neighborhoods into profit zones. They used cops as soldiers, warrant mistakes as weapons. Meanwhile, Darius tracked a GPS signal, the last known location of Reynolds's unmarked police vehicle. It led to an airstrip outside the city. Under the cover of darkness, he moved across the tarmac. In the hangar, he saw them, Reynolds, Harding, and two men in suits, standing near a jet. He crept closer, heart pounding. Reynolds handed Harding a small drive. Everything's cleaned up. The footage leaks contained. Harding nodded. Good. The feds will handle Carter. He won't live long enough to talk. Darius's grip tightened on his knife. He wanted to end it right there, but his training whispered, not yet. You don't kill for rage. You strike for purpose. He pulled out his phone, recording the conversation through his earpiece, mic. The evidence he needed, the proof that Leah's death was not a mistake. Then a click behind him froze his breath. Don't move, said a voice. He turned slowly. Reynolds's men stood behind him, guns raised. Drop the phone, Commander, Reynolds said, smirking. Didn't think you'd make it this far. The capture, they dragged Darius into the hangar, forcing him to his knees. Harding stepped forward, looking down like a judge over a prisoner. You could have been a hero, he said, but you had to play martyr. Darius stared up, eyes cold as steel. You killed my wife for money. Harding sighed. No, Carter. The city killed your wife. The system you served. You were just too blind to see it. Reynolds laughed softly. Let's end this. He raised his gun, but before he could pull the trigger, boom, the hangar door exploded. Floodlights burst in. FBI, drop your weapons. Maya stood behind the agents, holding the flash drive in her trembling hands. She had sent the recording to a federal contact minutes before Darius was caught, and it worked. Gunfire erupted. Chaos filled the air. Darius dove for cover, rolling behind a crate as bullets tore through the walls. He saw Reynolds running toward the plane, the same man who'd destroyed his life, and instinct took over. Darius sprinted through the crossfire, tackled Reynolds to the ground, and ripped the gun from his hand. They struggled in the dirt until Darius slammed him against the concrete. You said no witnesses, Darius growled. Reynolds coughed, choking on blood. I was just following orders exactly, Darius said coldly. So was I. A final punch knocked Reynolds unconscious. By the time the dust settled, the FBI had Harding in cuffs. Maya ran to Darius, shaking, tears mixing with rain. You're alive, she whispered. He nodded slowly, for now. But as the agents took them aside, one officer muttered under his breath, Commander Carter, the hero who became the hunted. The twist by morning. The footage of the raid and the hangar confession were everywhere. The city erupted in protest. People marched for Leah, for every innocent life lost in the shadows. Reynolds and Harding were charged with corruption, manslaughter, and conspiracy. But the story didn't end there, because hours later, as Darius sat in a safe house with Maya, he received a message from an anonymous number. You think it ends with Reynolds. Vanguard has roots deeper than you imagine. Be careful who you trust. Darius stared at the message, silent. Maya looked at him. What is it? He slipped the phone into his pocket. Just a reminder, he said quietly. War never really ends. Outside, Crowds chanted Leah's name under the morning sun. But deep down, Darius knew this was only the beginning. 2 weeks later, the city had gone quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after chaos, when people think the story is over. But Darius Carter knew better. He had seen too many wars end halfway, in a small cabin hidden deep in Virginia woods. Darius watched from the shadows as news anchors celebrated justice served. Reynolds and Harding were in federal custody. Vanguard Realty had suspended operations. But Darius's instincts screamed that it was all too neat, too fast, too clean, because the text he'd received that night, "Be careful who you trust," came from a military-grade encrypted number. Someone inside the system wanted him alive. Someone who knew what was still buried. The file that shouldn't exist. Maya showed up one rainy afternoon, holding a manila folder with trembling hands. "You were right," she said. "It doesn't end with Vanguard." She dropped the folder on the table. Inside were corporate documents, names, contracts, and a familiar seal. A golden eagle, clutching 3 arrows. Department of Defense. Darius stared at it. "This is government," he said flatly. "Not real estate." Maya nodded. "Vanguard Realty isn't a company. It's a cover operation, a front for a defense contractor called Helios Systems. They use police raids to clear low-income areas for testing autonomous surveillance drones. They call it urban compliance zones." Darius leaned back, running a hand over his face. "So Leah died in a weapons test zone." Maya's voice broke. She was collateral in a secret project. "They're trying to turn American neighborhoods into battlefield simulations." He stood, pacing, every muscle coiled with anger. And Reynolds was their cleanup man. He silenced anyone who got too close. Maya looked up. "Including you." The betrayal that night. Darius drove to Washington, D.C. He moved like a ghost again, silent, methodical, unseen. He had a name now, General Marcus Kane, the retired officer listed as Helios Systems chief executive. A man decorated for service. A man Darius had once served under. At midnight, he broke into Kane's estate. The house was enormous, marble floors, glass walls, and a trophy room full of medals and photos. In the center, a framed photo caught his eye. Kane, Reynolds, Harding, all smiling together. Brothers in power. On the desk, a file marked Project Fireline lay open. Inside were blueprints for police drones, maps of targeted neighborhoods, and a memo signed by Kane himself. Operational expansion approved. Civilian casualties acceptable within margin. Darius's vision blurred with rage. He snapped a photo with his phone, and that's when he heard it. A click. He turned. A gun was pointed straight at his chest. Maya stood in the doorway. "Put the file down, Darius," she whispered. He froze, staring at her. "What are you doing?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't have a choice. They have my brother. They said they'd kill him if I didn't deliver you." For the first time in his life, Darius felt something worse than betrayal, pity. "Maya," he said quietly, "you could have told me. We could have found another way." She shook her head, trembling. "They said you'd understand." "Yeah," he said softly. "I do. Because I've heard that line before. On every battlefield where good people sold their souls." She lowered the gun, but too late. A spotlight flared from outside. Dozens of armed men surrounded the house. Helicopters roared overhead. A voice echoed through a megaphone. "Commander Darius Carter. This is General Kane. You're trespassing on federal property. Come out unarmed." Darius glanced at Maya. "Get down." Then the windows shattered. The storm bullets tore through the glass as Darius flipped the desk for cover. He moved like he was back in Kandahar, focused, calm, deadly. He returned fire, using their blind spots. Maya crawled across the floor, clutching her camera, filming everything. Outside, General Kane watched through binoculars, lips curled into a smile. "Make sure he doesn't leave alive," he ordered. But Darius wasn't running. He was downloading the files, every name, every contract, every signature, onto a small encrypted drive. The evidence that could destroy them all. He turned to Maya. When this is over, you take this to the press. No one else. Understand? She nodded through tears. Darius, go. She crawled toward the back exit as Darius reloaded. The house was burning now, flames licking the walls, smoke choking the air. A grenade rolled across the floor. Darius dove, covering Maya, as it exploded behind them. He dragged her out through the side door, coughing through the smoke. In the chaos, a black SUV screeched to a stop. An agent stepped out, tall, in a gray suit, and shouted, "Carter, get in." Darius aimed his gun. "Who are you?" The man flashed a badge. "Federal Whistleblower Task Force. You have something we need." Darius hesitated. Then Maya screamed, "They're coming." He tossed the drive to her and shouted, "Go with him. If I don't make it, finish this." She shook her head, crying, "I'm not leaving you. You already saved me," he said. "Now save her." Before she could argue, he turned and ran back into the burning house, toward the men who took everything from him. Inside, through the smoke and heat, he found General Kane standing at the top of the stairs, gun in hand, calm as ever. "You could have been my successor," Kane said, "but you let emotion make you weak." Darius raised his weapon. "No, sir. Emotion makes me human." The fire crackled between them, one old soldier against another, one fighting for truth, the other for control. And as they faced each other through the flames, both men knew only one of them was walking out alive. Flames climbed the walls like hungry demons. Smoke filled the air, black and thick, but Darius Carter kept walking. His boots crunched on broken glass. His gun hung at his side. And at the top of the burning staircase stood General Marcus Kane, calm and cruel, a man who'd built his power on other people's pain. Kane smirked. "You should have stayed dead, Commander." Darius's voice was low, steady. "You should have stayed retired." They circled each other through the smoke, two soldiers of different wars, one fighting for greed, the other for truth. The Battle of Goskane fired first. The bullet grazed Darius's shoulder. Pain flared, but Darius didn't slow. He rolled behind a beam, returning fire. Wood splintered, glass shattered, sparks rained down. The blaze roared louder, eating the house alive. "You think that people will care about your little crusade?" Kane shouted over the chaos. "They forget tomorrow. The world needs control." Darius moved closer, ducking under the railing, his voice echoing through the smoke. "The world needs justice. You turned war into business." He lunged, tackling Kane. They crashed through the railing, falling hard into the living room below. Both men groaned, disoriented, guns flying across the floor. Kane reached first, grabbing a metal pipe. He swung hard. It struck Darius's ribs, but Darius caught the next blow mid-swing, twisted Kane's arm, and slammed him against the wall. Years of military discipline took over, precise, merciless, silent. "You sent men into homes to kill innocent people," Darius growled. "You killed my wife." Kane's lip curled. "Your wife? Oh, Commander. You still don't get it, do you?" Darius froze. "What are you talking about?" Kane chuckled darkly, blood trickling from his mouth. Leah wasn't collateral. She was a target. The shocking truth the words hit harder than any bullet. Darius grabbed him by the collar, eyes wide. "What did you say?" "She was investigating us," Kane hissed. "Your sweet wife, the teacher. She wasn't just teaching kids. She was writing an expose for a community newsletter. She stumbled onto Vanguard's deals. We intercepted her emails. She knew about our plans." Darius's throat went dry. "No." "Oh yes," Kane sneered. "She was going to expose us. And you think it was a mistake we picked your house? You think that raid was random?" He leaned closer, whispering through a wicked grin. We made it look like one. For a moment, everything inside Darius went still. The world blurred. The sound of the fire disappeared. Then something broke inside him. He screamed. A sound ripped straight from the depths of his soul and threw Cain across the room. Furniture splintered. Cain fell hard, coughing blood. "You murdered her," Darius said, voice shaking with rage and grief. "You killed her because she told the truth." Cain laughed weakly. "She died for nothing. You all will." Darius grabbed him by the shirt, hauling him to his feet. "You're wrong. She died for something bigger than you'll ever understand." He dragged the general toward the flames as the ceiling groaned. Cain fought back weakly, but Darius overpowered him, pushing him against the window. Outside, police sirens wailed. The world was finally watching. "You wanted to make war at home," Darius said. "Now, you can burn with it." He hurled Cain through the window. Glass shattered, flames burst outward, and the general fell into the yard below unconscious, but alive enough to face justice. The house was collapsing now. Beams cracked. Fire raged. Darius staggered toward the door, his body weak, his vision fading. And then, through the smoke he saw her, Leah, not really there, but in his mind, standing in the doorway in her white nightgown, smiling softly. "Come home, Darius," she whispered. He smiled weakly, tears streaming down his soot-streaked face. "I'm coming, baby." Then the roof gave way. A wall of fire came down, and the world went black. The aftermath when Darius woke. Everything was white. The smell of antiseptic. The sound of heart monitors. He was alive barely. Maya sat beside his bed, eyes swollen from crying. "You made it," she whispered. "The FBI found you in the wreckage. Cain's in custody. Helios Systems has been exposed. It's over." He turned his head slowly, voice weak. "No, Maya, it's not over. Not until people remember her name." Maya nodded, holding his hand. "They already do. The world's calling her, the teacher who died for the truth." Darius closed his eyes. For the first time since that terrible night, his heart felt light. But deep inside, he knew peace was a fragile thing, and truth always comes with a price. 3 months later, America was still talking about it. The raid, the video, the fallen teacher, and the man who refused to stay silent. Darius Carter walked slowly onto the steps of the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. His left arm was in a sling. His face carried the scars of the fire, but his eyes, they burned with something stronger than anger now. Purpose. Crowds filled the plaza, holding signs that read, "Justice for Leah, end the corruption, one man against the system." Reporters shouted his name. Flashes went off like lightning, but he didn't stop. He walked straight toward the microphones, toward the truth. Maya stood beside him, trembling with pride. She'd published everything, every document, every recording, every secret Darius had risked his life to uncover. The world had seen it all, how police raids were used to clear black neighborhoods, how Helios Systems built its empire on lies, and how one teacher's death lit the match that exposed it all. The hearing inside the courthouse. Senators and cameras filled the grand hall. It wasn't just a hearing. It was history. They wanted to hear from the man who'd brought a nation to its knees. Darius sat before them, straightbacked.com. One senator leaned forward. "Commander Carter, you could have fled. You could have vanished. Why come back?" He took a deep breath. "I didn't fight for revenge," he said softly. "I fought for remembrance." The room went silent. He looked up, eyes glassy but steady. "You all called Leah's death a mistake, but it wasn't. It was a message from a system that treats black lives as numbers, not names. From men who think power means never having to say sorry. But they were wrong." He paused, looking down at his scarred hands. "My wife believed that truth has a heartbeat, and if enough people listen, it can shake the world. I didn't start this war. You did. But now, I'm ending it. Not with guns, but with her story. The legacy after his testimony, the entire country shifted. Helios Systems was dismantled. Captain Reynolds and General Kane were sentenced to life without parole. Police reform bills passed across multiple states, but none of it brought Leah back. And every night, Darius still sat by the window, staring at her old photo, her laughing, holding her students' drawings. He could almost hear her voice. Keep going, Darius. Don't let the fire die. One evening, Maya came to visit. She handed him a folded piece of paper, an invitation. What's this? He asked. She smiled. They're naming the new school after her. The Leah Carter Academy for Truth and Justice. Darius stared at it for a long moment, then looked up at the sky. He smiled, small, tired, but real. She'd like that. The Morillon, the day of the opening, children ran through the halls, their laughter echoing like music. Darius walked through the entrance, stopping beneath a giant mural of Leah, her smile painted across the wall with the words, "Truth never dies." A little girl tugged on his sleeve. "Mr. Carter, were you really in the war?" He smiled gently. "A few of them. Did you win?" she asked, eyes wide. He looked around at the school, at the sunlight spilling through the windows, at the laughter filling what used to be silence. Then he knelt down and said softly, "I didn't win the war." "Your teacher did." The girl tilted her head. "How?" "By being brave enough to tell the truth," he said, "even when it cost her everything." The final moment that night, as the city lights glowed across the water, Darius stood on the bridge where he and Leah used to walk. He held her locket, the one the paramedics had returned to him. Inside was a photo of them, smiling on their wedding day. He opened it, whispering, "I did it, baby. The world knows now." A soft wind blew through the night, and for a moment, it felt like she was there, her hand in his, her laughter echoing faintly in the breeze. He closed the locket and looked out at the horizon. The city still had its problems. The system still had its cracks. But tonight, for once, justice had a name. Leah Carter, and her husband, the man who'd lost everything, had finally kept his promise. He walked away slowly, disappearing into the glow of dawn. A soldier without a war, but with a reason to live again. Moral messages sometimes. Justice isn't found in courts or headlines. It's found in the hearts that refuse to forget. Truth may burn like fire, but from that fire, heroes are born, and the greatest heroes are the ones who fight not to win, but to make sure no one else has to.